Hello and welcome to Unworthy History. Today we got some actual history for you from this book right here, Indian Depredations in Texas by J.W. Wilbarger, published back in 1889. Now today's story takes place in Grayson County around the year 1839. It's called The Settlement of the Dugan Family. In January of 1838, the family of Daniel Dugan left Bois D'arc and settled near Choctaw Creek in Grayson County, not far from a little settlement or town called Warren. Soon after the Dugan family left Bois D'arc, Micah Davis also moved and settled near Iron Ore Creek, not far from and west of what is now called Denison, Josiah Washburn remaining in Bois D'arc. Roving bands of Indians had up to this time frequently camped near the settlements, and appearing to be friendly and anxious to trade with white people. There seemed to be no occasion for anticipating trouble with them, although some of the men would at times paint their faces a hideous red, act angry, scowl, and talk about the white man killing their buffalo and turkey. Sometimes the squaws and children would sullenly refuse to talk, and finally seldom appear when the Indians visited the settlements. To people better posted on Indian tactics, all these signs would have been sufficient to warn them that the wily Indian meant mischief of some kind. But they did not notice it. Some time after Davis left Bois D'arc, Washburn told his wife one day that he was going over to the old shop to get a chain of his hat that had been left there by Davis, also saying he would be back by sundown. He got on his horse and, taking his gun for any game he might chance to see, started upon his errand. The afternoon wore away, and at sunset the expected husband and father was not at home or in sight. At dark he was still absent. With increasing anxiety, the waiting wife and children watched and listened through the long hours of that night for some sound of his coming, and still no sign of him. At daylight, the neighbors were sent for, men armed themselves, and started out to hunt for the missing man, who was never more to gladden his home with his presence. They found him not far from the shop, dead. He had been there, had secured his chain, and was on his way back to his home when the Indians attacked him. They had shot and scalped him, and taking his horse and gun had made good their escape. The whole country around was alarmed, and the settlers in every direction were notified to be on their guard. From that time on, the people were harassed in every conceivable manner that Indian ingenuity and cunning could devise. The Indians would remain quiet for weeks, sometimes months at a time, then suddenly appear, kill a man or two, maybe a whole family, then as suddenly disappear, driving before them all the horses they could find. The time came when men went armed at all times, even at their work in the fields, and a loaded gun was always left at home to be fired by the women, either as a signal of distress or in defense should they be attacked. One of the many methods or tricks resorted to by the cunning Indian to take advantage of the unwary settler was to waylay his cows during the day, tie them out in the woods, and take off their bells. The cows would not come home at the usual time, but during the night the tinkling of the cowbells would be heard in the distance. They would approach close to the house, wander around in an aimless sort of way, as cattle generally do, walk around by the cow pen at last, and with a final rattle appear to settle down for the night. The unsuspecting settler would hear the bells, and thinking his cows had come home, would rise early in the morning to attend to them, open his door only to find himself and family confronted by gleaming tomahawks and an implacable foe. A desperate struggle and fight for life and loved ones would ensue, but it would be the vain endeavor of the weak and defenseless against the strong and mighty, and soon the blackened walls and mutilated victims would mutely tell the story of a home destroyed and a few more names added to the bloody list of martyred pioneers. In the emergencies of no organized help from the government and an unprotected border, there arose the necessity of some kind of reliable help against the repeated attacks of the Indians. A sort of a state militia was formed, composed of laboring men, hunters, and trappers, and were known as Texas Rangers. They were ever ready to answer a call for help, or go to the rescue of those settlers who had ventured too far out upon the exposed frontier. Sure shots, every one of them, and skilled in all kinds of woodcraft. thoroughly ported and up to the tricks of the cunning Indian. They were a host in themselves, and the timid felt assured of safety whenever a ranger was on hand. In fighting Indians, they did effective work by fighting Indian style. If they had been hampered by red tape and only allowed to fire and fall back by military rule, the chances are they'd have been several months capturing a few old squaws, while the bucks would be skipping around here and there, taking in the scalps. So that's it for this story on this episode. So again, this took place in Grayson County. It's about some of the first settlement of Grayson County, and so this is on the very northern edge of Texas. So if you want to hear more episodes like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Unworthy History.